grapes. All the farmers around us thought we were nuts. Nobody had grapes in the ground. My father called up the University of Maryland wanting to know what varieties they recommended, and basically they said, what are wine grapes? So my father contacted Cornell, and we just started from ground one. We started from the ground floor, started putting in a lot of different varieties. Our first vineyard was 6 acres, had something like 30 different varieties in it. It was a large experiment. And what you're seeing now is a continuation of that experiment. Early on, in the late 70s, we started the winery in 76. In the late 70s, we had a vineyard that was completely eaten by deer. About 2 days before we wanted to pick it. We started feeding the grape pulp from our presses to the deer. So we got the juice, they got the pulp. That was the idea. Right? It kept them out of the vineyard. And the more we got into doing things like that, the more we said, well, you know, what else can we do to use... How many here? Stop. What else can we do to use what we produce as byproducts for the good of the ground that we're working with? We, because of how we operate, we are directly related to how the grapes come in off the field. We can see a direct relationship on how we treat the vineyards into the quality of the wine that we produce. So it became very apparent to us that we had to make sure that we were good land and environmental stewards to be able to produce the best product that we can. So we started reusing the pulp. We started taking the cream of tartar crystals that we produce, and they were, instead of being just dumped back out in the field, I actually found a source by giving them to nursery schools to allow them to be used for making Play-Doh for kids. Okay? We recycle all of our glass, all of our cardboard. If you notice, the recycle bin is 50% larger than our trash bin. We recycled more than 20 tons of recyclable material here last year. And that's recyclables that can be hauled off the farm. That doesn't include all the pulp just being used back out in the vineyards. In 2005 through 2007, we repurposed a 200-year-old dairy barn into a tasting room and a banquet facility. All of the old barn wood that was stripped off the barn was used downstairs as all the wood trim work in the winery, or down in the tasting room, excuse me. We insulated with a product called Aircrete, which is concrete foam insulation. Insulates 5 times that of fiberglass, but with no off-gassing. It's used for environmentally sensitive people. We installed radiant floor heating, which is powered by a diesel-fired generator. Very efficient form of heating. This year was rather unique. We were hit by a tornado. We went 100% wind energy. Let me back up. We went 100% wind energy in February. I'm going to do this chronologically here. We went 100% wind energy in February through Clean Currents. Lynn Gardner's here from Clean Currents. Do you see any wind towers? No. We buy wind energy. We don't have to have the towers here. So when you're buying electrons through your grid, you can now say, I want wind electrons versus nuclear electrons or coal electrons. In April, we were hit by a tornado. 4 days after that, we received the Maryland Green Business of the Year Award. We were hit by a tornado, and I called up Clean Currents, and I called up Lynn. I said, we didn't order that much wind energy. But the neat thing about it is that the whole roof of the processing room was ripped off. if you notice the roof, it has now skylights in it. We haven't used the lights in that room since April. Because now I'm just working with the natural light from outside. It's just crazy little things that can be done like this that make a huge impact in the whole overall scheme of things. In August, we were hit by an earthquake. In September, we had the floods, the hurricane. Okay, so we had a tornado, we had an earthquake, we had floods. The only thing we need left is a plague of locusts, and we would have it all done. I was working with Becky and Rick to get the grant for the solar, and we did that. But about 4 years ago, on a trip to Italy, my wife and I were walking through Florence, and we walked out onto a piazza where there was about 20 different electric scooters plugged in to a box outlet sitting on next to the curb, just in the middle of this piazza. And here this fella comes up with an electric car, backs up, pulls out an extension cord, looks over, puts in an adapter, pulls out the plug from one of the electric scooters, plugs the electric scooter into his adapter, and plugs his adapter into the box on the wall. I said, gee, how much is this? And he says, oh, I bought the car used at 4,000 euros. I'm like, no, not the car. How much is the electric? He says, oh, as long as you run a green vehicle in the city of Florence, the electric is free. Because earlier that day, we were given a tour of the city, and the main cathedral in the middle of town had scaffolding, about 200 feet of it. It's a huge cathedral. The thing's 500 feet long and 200 feet wide. Got about 200 feet of scaffolding setting up on it where they were cleaning the pollution off of the building. Okay? And the pollution's degrading all the marble and all the great architecture features over there. And what they're doing is they're transferring the cost of cleaning the pollution with the cost of getting green vehicles to run in their city. What a great changeover. You can't replace the antiquities, but you can keep the pollution from landing on the buildings. So these are some of the neat things that, you know, are an ongoing process here. Becky asked me, well, you know, gee, this is a great thing, you know, what are you doing now? I said, well, we're in talks. We have a number of different ideas that we're pursuing for putting in LEED Gold buildings up here when we expand. So it'll be, you know, it's an interesting ongoing commitment to the environment and to the soil, because this is where it's all at. People in just 2 generations have become so disconnected from agriculture that they walk into a grocery store and they don't know where their food comes from anymore. But people will leave our winery and they'll go home and they'll bring our wine over to friends' houses and they'll go, I know the family that makes this. We should be able to do that with all of our food in the U.S. But thank you so much. One, two.
Okay, ready? Wait.
I don't know. I guess they can count.
Who's going to count?
3,
Who's
2,
counting now?
1, now.
Okay, on the count of 3.
Okay.
1, 2, 3.